I actually don't think NetherRealm's next game is Injustice 3 or Mortal Kombat 12. On, I don't know what the sales were exactly, but I could have swore that Injustice 2 underperformed from what they were wanting. Like they might have actually been wanting to get more out of it. So I think for that reason, Injustice 3 would be off the table. But at the same time, I think story-wise, there's nothing left to say on it. Because they were always very adamant that the games and the comics, or the comics were canon with the games. And outside of the opening of Injustice 2, the Batman arc, that's the flashback, which contradicts how Robin joined Superman and the death of Zaz from the comics. Outside of that, they hold pretty true. I mean, even Ed Boon himself said that the Green Arrow in the second game is the one that Dr. Fate found for Black Canary in the comics. If that's the case, and the comics are still canon, then that means that Injustice versus Masters of the Universe is the conclusion to the series. Like, we're done at that point. They wrapped it up. It's over. So there's no story to continue with. Masters of the Universe versus Injustice makes it where the canon ending to Injustice 2 is Superman wins and enslaves Batman. And then Damian switches sides, takes on the Batman role, and then they do what they did in the first game, reach out to another world and pick up He-Man to help in the fight. And it wraps up the whole story. Everything is finished. So in that sense, there's not really a reason to have an Injustice 3. And if the sales weren't what they wanted, then I don't feel like there would be an Injustice 3. In terms of Mortal Kombat, 11 was also very much a wrap-up. Like, this was everything that you felt like Ed Boon had left that he wanted to do. It brought back the movie actors to get skins and voice characters. Sonya Blade finally defeats Kano. Sub-Zero and Scorpion are friends. Hellfire Scorpion becomes a good guy. Liu Kang finally ascends to godhood. Like, every box is checked. So I feel like, and even Ed Boon said that he wanted to work on something else. So I feel like it's just 12 doesn't make a lot of sense right now. Although I don't know how the contract is actually laid out, but NetherRealm I don't think owns Mortal Kombat. Actually, NetherRealm doesn't own Mortal Kombat. Warner Brothers owns Mortal Kombat. But I assume there's some contract thing to where NetherRealm is tied to Mortal Kombat. But I think realistically, Warner Brothers could do whatever they wanted with it, which means there could still be a Mortal Kombat 12 coming, but it could be a different studio working on it, which would make a lot of sense because whatever they end up doing next, it needs to be different. Like, this is a complete world rewrite. And the game ended with Fire Lord Liu Kang going to the Great Kung Lao. So it makes sense that he's telling him how to beat Goro so that he wins that tournament and locks Outworld out. So the Mortal Kombat tournament shouldn't really be a thing anymore. So the story would be able to kick off with like invasions and stuff. But Mortal Kombat as we know it should be done. Like, it should just be an entirely new world, entirely new stories, totally revamped characters. And I'd be all on board with that. Like, you know, Sonya Blade's a sadistic ex-Special Forces operative. Kano is the, you know, the Outback family man. Johnny Cage is the worst side of Hollywood. You know, totally flip the characters up, change things around. I mean, I feel like the biggest thing is no matter what they do, Mortal Kombat 12 should be the first time that the Great Kung Lao is playable. That to me is a definite. But just because of the fact that Ed Boon said that he wanted to work on something different, he wanted to go into a new IP, I feel like it has to be done. Like, 11 is the end for him. That would make a lot of sense to me, even though he keeps posting that, you know, Mortal Kombat stuff is definitely coming. He could technically be trolling, and it just means that it is coming, but not from NetherRealm. But at the same time, Street Fighter 6 is a totally different entity from Street Fighter 5, and I think that's the same crew. So, you know, maybe. And with the duration of time, if they were going all the way back to scratch, coming up with whole new systems, completely rewriting every character, completely rewriting the entire story, reimagining Mortal Kombat in its entirety. If that's the case, then I could see why it was taking so much time. But I still just don't think that that's what they're doing next. And then there's the idea of Marvel. Marvel approached NetherRealm and talked to them about making a game. And everyone leapt to, it has to be Marvel versus DC. They wouldn't have approached them for any other reason. And yes, if it was Marvel versus DC, that would also explain the long duration, because you're dealing with multiple companies at that point. Like, Disney has to sign off on things, Warner Brothers has to sign off on things, and you know both of these companies want their characters to be the headliners. I mean, going to NetherRealm, you're basically going to Warner Brothers, so you know that they want it to be DC versus Marvel, and they want their characters to come out ahead in the story mode. But Marvel is also very controlling on that stuff, so they would be wanting the same, as well as you're going to use very specific characters. But considering how much those two companies don't want to work together, I do not think it makes any sense that they would go to NetherRealm for Marvel versus DC. I think that Injustice is one of the lowest possibilities of what we're getting next, and right below that is Marvel versus DC. I think there's like a 1 in a billion chance that that's actually happening. It could happen down the line, but that's definitely not what Marvel went to NetherRealm for. They're looking just for a new fighting game, because the fighting games have always sold, and so they want someone to work on it. All I get out of them meeting with NetherRealm is not the fact that they wanted Marvel vs. DC or even Marvel vs. Mortal Kombat. What I heard is they don't want to work with Capcom anymore, and they're going to NetherRealm specifically, or first, because it's a US-based company. Because even though if they're dealing with Capcom USA, they're still dealing with Capcom Japan. And I think that's the part that they're kind of tired of. So all I hear is, there's no more Marvel vs. Capcom. We're not getting Marvel vs. Capcom 5. That's not in the plans. Marvel wants to work with a different company that's focused in the US. And I actually did think it was the Marvel game. I thought it was a Marvel fighting game that NetherRealm was making, and at one of the earlier Disney Expos this year, I thought they were going to announce it. I was convinced. And then it didn't happen, because that was the thing. He did say it wasn't up to them when it was announced. But that could also be just because of the merger stuff that's going on this year. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was Disney they were working with. It could have been just the merger has held everything up and they can't announce something until that's done. Which could still be a thing. I think we're a few months away from the merger being finalized. So we could still be months away from when they're allowed to announce the next game. What else was an option? There was the RPG, Shaolin Monks. That's the other thing that people thought that they were making, Shaolin Monks 2. That's possible. They could be making Shaolin Monks 2. They could be doing Fire and Ice finally. It could be a brand new Special Forces. It could be an all new style of Mortal Kombat RPG. That's completely possible. And that would definitely explain why it's taking so much time. Because they're having to build it completely from scratch. And at this point, I feel like Ed Boon really wants to get it right. So I could even see him wanting to do Special Forces over again, to be like, nah, we're doing it the right way this time. And I could definitely see him wanting to get to Fire and Ice. I feel like Fire and Ice has better odds than Shaolin Monks 2, or just a brand new style of RPG. You know, maybe going back to the first game, you get to play as Sonya, Johnny, or Liu. I don't know. But that would definitely explain the long duration time, trying to get something like that right. Like, for as much time as they put in it, that would probably make the most sense right now, that it's an RPG. It fits the fact that he wanted to work on something different. It fits the fact that basically the Mortal Kombat story is done, but there is also like the not allowed to say anything yet. That was what made me think it was Marvel for sure. As soon as they said we're not allowed, I'm like, oh, it's Marvel. But apparently not, or at least not likely yet. Now, it could be Mortal Kombat versus Injustice. That's true. I don't know though. I don't see that. I could see them wanting to, just on the fact that, like, even though Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe did big numbers as crossovers will, it wasn't exceptional. So I could see them wanting to go back and redo it and do it better, definitely. But I don't know if I actually see them jumping on that. I feel like that's still low, but that's like a step above Injustice 3 for me. The last option I could think of is a completely new IP. Because Ed Boon's been talking about that for years. He's done Mortal Kombat for decades at this point. He's done Injustice twice. He's delved into the DC Universe 3 total times. So I could see them being very ready to just find a completely new system, a completely new style, and grab a new IP. And both variants of that would take time. If it was a brand new original creation, they have to find the story, create every character, put all of it together, flesh it out, build a system, and then finish with the game. You know, it's I could see that taking a lot of time for them. And then if they were trying to get a license to do something, that's also going to take time. NetherRealm making Mortal Kombat, very straightforward. NetherRealm getting access to DC, it's the same company, so it's very straightforward. It's a phone call, can I do it, please and thank you. But getting a new IP for something outside, like for me, I want it to be Turtles. I don't care. It's a pipe dream, but I'm holding out hope that they're making a new IP and it's a brand new Ninja Turtles fighting game. Because Tournament Fighters, fine, great, but it was different characters across each system. It's old, it was fine, and there's so many other characters to add in. Like more than just the 4 Turtles. Bebop, Rocksteady, Krang could be your final boss. There's a huge roster of Ninja Turtles characters. So if I was to put out a pipe dream of what I want NetherRealm to be working on, it's a new IP and it's a new Ninja Turtles fighter. That's what I want. Getting all that licensing nailed down, especially for something like Ninja Turtles, which has a very complicated license, yeah, I could see that being something that takes them a good chunk of time to work out. So if I was to rank what I anticipate, I think the top option is they're doing a new RPG. Number 2 is a Marvel fighting game, specifically Marvel characters. Number 3, brand new IP. I think it would be a new license, and then number 4 would be brand new characters altogether. 5 would be Mortal Kombat 12, which it's a distant 5 for me, with a whole new story, whole new designs, plot, everything. Number 6 as Mortal Kombat versus Injustice, and then Injustice, and then Marvel versus DC right at the bottom. But that's just me. I mean, I was completely wrong on Street Fighter. Everything I've guessed on Street Fighter has been totally inaccurate. They announced new characters for 5, and I was like, it's gonna be dolls. They've already built them. They're gonna put the dolls playable in the game. Didn't happen. Not at all. Not a single one. I thought we were ways out from Street Fighter 6. They announced it. Then I thought we were getting crazy new characters. I think I predicted a few old characters coming back that we hadn't seen in a while. Hagar finally being playable, and a couple of the other dolls that were still around were finally going to be playable. And none of it. I have a 0% record with Street Fighter for probably the last decade. So it probably is going to carry over from Mortal Kombat 2, but if I was just to guess on like what NetherRealm's doing, just based on what they've said, how long it's taking, that's where I'm at.